Hi, welcome back. So the next topic which we are going to cover is advanced commands. We already talked about the main commands in which we discuss about the Terraform init, Terraform plan, apply, destroy commands. Those are the most frequent command which we are using with the Terraform. On top of that, we do have some special or advanced commands which we are using for the special task. So let's have a look what type of advanced commands we do have in the Terraform. In this section, we are going to talk about Terraform provider command. Then we will discuss about the Terraform version command. Then we will talk about Terraform Taint and untaint command. Then we will have a look to the Terraform console command. And at the last, we are going to talk about Terraform graph command. Let's start with the Terraform providers. Terraform providers command is basically to get the output of the providers. So let's assume you are using multiple modules in your Terraform. And in these modules, you have different providers or different required providers block. So I want like my NSG should work with some specific Terraform provider, Azure provider, and my resource group should have some another specific Azure provider. And my main command or main code has its own provider defined. So if I have like a multiple modules, or if I'm calling multiple modules in my main code, and I wanted to list out like what version of providers I'm using in the whole code, all the modules and everything. So I can get the list of those providers and their version with the help of the Terraform providers command. So let's have a look. Let's assume I do have this code where I do have the module for the NSG or module for the resource group, and then I have a module for the NSG. So these two modules I am calling in my main code, and then there is a providers.tf file where I do have my main code required providers block. So I wanted to use like a specific version of the Azure provider. So I have defined the specific version of the Azure provider in my main code, in my resource group module and my NSG module. Now I wanted to have a list of all the providers which I'm using in my main commands. So either I go to each modules folder and go to their required providers block section and see which version they have assigned. But is it a feasible way? So it's not, of course, because let's assume you're using 50 modules. So if you're using like 10s or 20s modules, then you have to go to each folder, and there might be possibility you are calling a module from a GitHub repository or somewhere else, and where you might not have the proper access to see what files we do have over there. So it will not be feasible to like get the specific version of the provider which you are using. So for that purpose, what we could do is we can use the Terraform providers command. When we run the Terraform providers command, we get output something like this, in which we can see there is a provider version for the main code. Okay, so the very first line will show you the provider version of the main code. Then second one, you can see module dot backend NSG. So it is related with the module dot backend NSG block which I am using, and I can see the provider name is the Azure RM and the version is 4.0.0, which is not same as my main code because I am using a specific version for this module. So I wanted to use the backend NSG or NSG module with just 4.0.0 Azure provider. So I have that dedicated version for that. And for the RG, I can see it's again different version. So for the resource group module, I do have version assigned 3.67.0. So this is how we can list out all the providers which we have in our Terraform code. So with the help of the Terraform providers command, you can list out like which module block using which particular Azure RM or the provider version. Okay, so with the help of the Terraform providers command, we can get all these details. The next command which we are going to talk about is the Terraform version command. That is again very helpful when you wanted to know like what version you are using for the Terraform. I'm not talking about the provider version. I'm talking about the Terraform tool version, the Terraform command which we are using. So we have to install it. We already saw that like how we are installing it, how we are upgrading the version. But with the help of the Terraform version command, we can list out what is the current version and if there is any latest available version available for the Terraform, we can also see that. So let's have a look. And this command is like independent to the Terraform code. If you don't have the code, still you can run this command. But if you have the code, then it will also show you the provider version. So let's run Terraform version command. I can see that there is an output. So the very first line will show you the current Terraform version which you have in your machine or your laptop. So you can see I'm using my Terraform version with 1.9.4. The second line will show you the provider version, the provider name and the version. So it will just show you the main code provider version. It will not show you the module version, which we can get with the Terraform providers command, but it will show you the main code version, main code provider version. So I can see the provider current version, and I'm getting this line because I'm running the Terraform version command from a folder where I do have the Terraform code and the provider. If I don't have, still I can run the Terraform version command and I can see the current version of the Terraform and also the latest available version of the Terraform. So I can also see what is the latest available version of the Terraform, and I can download it from that particular URL which we can get in the Terraform version output itself. So we can download it and we can replace our current version or upgrade our current version. We already saw how to upgrade the version, so we can follow the same process and we can update them or upgrade the Terraform version over here. Okay, so the next one we are going to talk about is the Terraform Taint and Untaint. This is a very special command, and we might use it or we might not. But like if you have some use case to use the taint command or the untaint command, then you can use it. So let me show you what taint command and untaint command is doing. Taint command is basically tainting your resource. So let's assume I do have this Terraform main code where I am deploying the resource group, backend NSG, prod resource group, and prod backend NSG. So I already deployed these resources. Now I'm facing some issue, or maybe my resource itself is gone into the failed status. So NSG and resource group generally don't go to the failed status, but virtual machine, AKS services like Azure Kubernetes services, this kind of a services sometimes go into the failed status in the Azure itself. In the Azure portal, you can say that the machine is failed. Or due to so and so reason, you wanted to redeploy the resource. So we already have the prod and the test resource group, but I want to redeploy it. I want to delete it and redeploy it. So you have two options. Either you delete it manually from the Azure portal and then you run the Terraform apply command again, so it will deploy the resource again. But if you don't have the access to the Terraform Azure portal, then you will not be able to do that. And you don't want it to do this thing manually. You're managing everything through the Terraform, so you wanted to do this stuff as well with the Terraform. So either you go with the manual way, or you what you could do is if you wanted to redeploy or replace some resource, some virtual machine is in the failed state and you wanted to redeploy that virtual machine, delete and redeploy it, or some resources you wanted to redeploy due to so and so reason. So what you could do is you can taint that resource, and to taint it, what you have to do is you have to use the Terraform. First, I'll show you that my current one is there is no infrastructure changes. This four resources is already been deployed, so there is no changes, right? Now what I'll do is I'll do the Terraform taint command, and I'll use the Terraform taint command to taint one of the resource, and we'll show you with the next plan command what will be the output. For now, there is no changes, no infrastructure changes is required because those resources are already being deployed. The resources are there, the code is matching with that, the state file is matching with that. But now when I'm gonna do the Terraform taint command, I'll use the Azure resource group, the test one, is in reference, and I'll taint it. As soon as I run this command, I can see the Azure RM resource group test-rg has been marked as tainted. So if it is marked as a tainted, then with the next Terraform plan command, that would be my output. And you can see now, because this resource was tainted, now this resource will be redeployed. And if you can see, it will be replaced. And if you see in the plan, there will be one to add and one to destroy. So the same resource group will be destroyed and recreated because I have marked it as a taint. So if you want to redeploy any resource, you can use the Terraform taint command. But let's assume you have like unintentionally marked it as a taint, or you had a plan to do the taint and redeploy it, but then you change your plan and now you don't want to do it. Then what you could do is you can use the Terraform untaint command. And with the Terraform untaint command, it's just opposite to the taint. So I did the taint for the Terraform resource for that Azure resource group for the test RG. Now I'm gonna do the untaint. So if it is untainted, that means with the next Terraform plan command, I'll get the same output as before. No changes, your infrastructure matches the configuration. So if you wanted to do the Terraform taint, like if you want to replace any existing resource, you can do the Terraform taint and you can do the Terraform apply. Terraform apply will delete this resource, destroy that resource, and then recreate it. But with the plan, you saw the plan and you have changed, like I don't want this thing anymore. So you can use the untaint to mark it untainted before running the Terraform plan or Terraform apply command. So the resource will be untainted and then there will not be any destroy and reapply thing. But if you apply the code after tainted, then the resource is tainted, it will be destroyed and recreated, and then there is no use of the Terraform untaint command. You can't do the, or you can't redo it, or you can't undo it. So if you did the taint and before apply you decided to untaint, then you can do the untaint. But if you did the taint and apply it and changes has been already done, has already been done, like the resource destroyed and recreated, then there is no way to like untaint it, or there will not be untaint anymore. So before applying, you have to make sure that your untaint, you do the untaint to make sure that this resource is not gonna destroy. So we do have this command, and if you want, then we can use this command to like perform this kind of stuff. Now there is another way. For now we saw that we can do it with the resource block, but let's assume I wanted to do, I have a module. In that module I have multiple resources like subnet, energy, and the route table. I just want to do the taint with one of the resource. So that is also can be been done. So to do it like for a resource which is inside the module, then what we will have to do is we'll have to use the module dot the name of the module block, and then inside the module we do have this resource network security group. So I can use dot and then I can provide the network security group name and then the block of the network security group. So if you want to do like just one resource inside your module, that is also can be done with this approach. So I just wanted to replace the network security group inside the module where I am deploying like subnet, route table and other resources. So I can do module dot the block name and then the resource provider resource type and then the provider resource block name. So that can also be done if you wanted to do. And for the other resources also, for the other task also, you can do the same approach. If you want to perform any specific task inside your resource or inside your module for one of the resources, this is how you refer it. And if you want to do the taint, then you can use this approach. So that's all about the Terraform taint and untaint command. In the next section, we are going to talk about Terraform taint and untaint in more precise way, in a practical way, and we'll see how we can use this command in a production way. So in this section, we are going to talk about the taint interrogation command in a practical way. I already explained what is the purpose of the taint interrogation, and I give a quick sneak peek like how it is working. So let's have a look in a practical way how it works. I do have this resource group, resource called virtual network VNet. So basically I do have this resource block. I wanted to do the taint interrogation. I have executed the Terraform plan command and I don't have any changes right now. Okay, my code is already in a sync with the actual environment. Now let's clean it up and run the Terraform taint command. Use the virtual network dot vnet. So I wanted to taint this particular virtual network, and we'll see what would be the impact of like making the resource or like flag a resource is a taint. And untaint is of course the opposite of the taint. So this resource is marked as a taint. If I run the Terraform plan command now, let's see what would be the output of the Terraform plan now. Earlier it was no changes, no like a new update or new resource to be created, no resource to be destroyed. It was already matching with the actual environment state file and the configuration file. So now let's have a look when we did the taint of this particular resource and it is marked as a tainted. Okay, so when we run the Terraform plan now, after doing the Terraform taint of the virtual network, I can see there is one resource to be destroyed and one resource to be added. And if I go to the detail of this resource, I can see like my virtual network is tainted. And taint means it is going to be recreated. So if I run the Terraform apply command now, that means this resource is going to be destroyed and recreated. So let's have a look what would happen if I do the Terraform apply. And let's assume if I have marked some resource accidentally taint, then I can use the Terraform untaint command to untaint it. Then on the next apply, the resource will not be redeployed. So Let's have a look. If we taint it and run the Terraform apply command, then what would happen? Okay, so the resource is going to be destroyed first, and then the virtual network is going to be redeployed. I can see the destroying is started, so the virtual network is going to be destroyed. Destruction completed, and as soon as the destruction is completed, the creating is started again. So this is how the Terraform taint command is working. If you wanted to redeploy any resource due to so and so reason, you can use the Terraform taint. I personally never face any use case or any scenario where I have to do the Terraform taint, but it always good to know that we do have this option. So let's assume there is an app service or database or something like that which is corrupted and you wanted to redeploy it, then you can do the Terraform taint instead of like running the Terraform destroy with the target or something like that. You can just simply do the Terraform taint, and on the next one, on the next apply, it will be automatically destroy and recreated. So that's all about the Terraform taint and untaint command. If you have any question, you can just put it into the comment, but it was very simple. Like if you want to redeploy any resource, you can just taint it. And if you don't want to redeploy it after doing the taint, then you can always do the untaint as well. So that's all about the taint and untaint command. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. So the next command which we are going to talk about is the Terraform console. This command is very helpful when you are doing the debugging of your code. So so far, if you are using the Terraform very actively, you know, like for the every output or to test anything, you have to run the Terraform plan. And for the few things, you have to run the Terraform apply first, and then only you can get the output of those commands or those resource block or the data source block if you wanted to check something. And if there is some special task you are performing on your variable, like some complex calculation you are doing with your variable, you are using the for loop or something like that, and you don't know like what would be the output of that for that expression, like some functions or something like that, then you first have to like write the command and then you do the output block or use the output block to generate the output. In some cases you might have to run the Terraform apply command first, and then you can do the Terraform plan and see like what would be the output. So these things are very difficult when you are doing the Terraform debugging or code debugging. So with the help of the Terraform console command, you can do the debug. Like you will get a command line prompt or command line interactive prompt with the Terraform console, and you can use the like your code, what you already have, like your main code, and you can refer that and you can see the output. So let's have a look what Terraform console command is doing and how we can use it to like get an output or see like what would be the output of my function or my expression or something like that. So let's assume I do have this again this main code and I'm running the Terraform console. As soon as you run the Terraform console command, you will get this kind of a Terraform command line prompt, and you'll be on a new prompt itself. And with this prompt, you can use any of your existing code to refer it to show the output. If there is a variable, then you can get the output of the variable. If there are some calculation or some like complex expression you are using and you don't know like what would be the output of those variable or what would be the value of those variable, then you can use here as a reference and you can see the output. So let's see if I'm using the Azure RM resource group itself. So I just wanted to check the output of this Azure RM block, that is resource group block. So I can use the Azure RM resource group dot the same reference which we are using, or this is how we refer it in the Terraform. And if I hit the enter, I can see the complete output from my state file. So basically Terraform console is getting all the information from the state file itself. It is already, if it is already been applied. So you can see the ID of the resource group, you can see the location, managed by, name of the resource, tag, timeout, and all those information, which we do have in the Terraform state file itself. Now let's see, I wanted to perform some special, like I wanted to do the upper, or wanted to do some like use the upper function here. So what I can do is I can use the upper function, and then I know I'll have to refer the name whatever I want. So I'm referring the name of the resource group itself, and I just want it into the in a upper way or in a upper character. So I can use this upper function here in the Terraform console. The same function you can use in the Terraform main code as well. If you have any other function, you can see like what would be the output of that function. Like we are using the try, or if we are using the cohesive, or if we are using some other function like to map or something like that, then those functions are also we can see here like what would be the output of those function or whatever the complex uh, Terraform expression you are using, like if condition if you wanted to use, but before using into the main command you wanted to see like what would be the output of that if condition. If you have the for loop, because I'm using in the most of the time for the for loop, because it's very when we are discussing about the for loop, you know like how complex it is. So we never know like what would be the output of that for loop or for expression. So I always use the Terraform console command to run the for expression first and see like what would be the output and if it is a desired output or not. So I can see this kind of a debugging over here with the help of the Terraform console command. If I run this command, then I can see the name of the resource group in a upper character. So that means my function worked over here. So with the help of the Terraform console command, we can do the debugging of our Terraform code. And we can see like whatever the output we are supposed to get, if it is matching with the desired output or not, before we are using it into the Terraform code itself. Okay, so with the help of the Terraform console command, we can do the debugging of our code. So we are going to talk about in a more practical way. I'll show you some more complex example in this gap section for the Terraform console command. So let's have a look. For Terraform console, we already saw the practical way when we were talking about the if condition. If you remember, I showed you an example that if we are changing the value of the var.environment, then what would be the impact of this changing the environment variable on the local, because we do have this if condition. So for the similar way, like we can use the Terraform console command to perform like a different task, or to see what would be the impact, what would be the output of this resource or something like that. So it's basically a command line tool where you can see all this information, or you can like before applying or before doing the plan, you can see like if you are performing any evaluation or anything on your variable, you can see the output of that. And if you want to perform some task, you want to see like what would be the value of that specific function or something like that, then you can use the Terraform console. To run the Terraform console, you can always run the Terraform console and hit enter. And then like I wanted to check the value of the local.txt, so I can hit the local.txt, and now my value is deployment date would be this one, because whatever the value I do have for the deployment I can see here. Then the environment was test, because I have configured the environment test here. So I am using the test as an environment, and sensitivity is basically depends on whatever the value of the environment. So my environment value here is the test, so value should be medium. And as we already talked about, if I'm going to change the environment value from test to prod, I'll just quickly save it, exit from the console, because to run the console, you have to save the code first and then run the Terraform console from the start. If you are in the console already and you are changing anything into the file and saving it, then it is not going to impact the console output, because console is directly talking to your Terraform configuration file when loading it, basically when you are running the Terraform console and your state file. So I have saved it, run the Terraform console again, and if now I'm going to do the local.txt, then the sensitivity would be high. And this deployment date is coming from the state file. So if you see the timing here, it's 1 o'clock, and right now it's 3 o'clock, but I don't see 3 o'clock, because this time is coming from the state file of the actual deployment. So when I have executed it initially, that time it was 1 o'clock. So you can do the like different task with the help of the Terraform console. Like I wanted to check the output of the module subnets, so that is also I can do module dot subnets. I'll able to see all the information here. So in the module.subnets, I do have all these outputs, subnet, then the address prefix. I wanted to check a specific value, like in the module.subnets, in the subnet, I'm going to see, so I can see all this information. I wanted to check for the backend. So what I do is module.subnets.subnet, and because I'm using the for each loop with the subnet inside the module, when we were writing the code, then backend would be the this one. And if I wanted to check what is the address prefix of the backend, so I can use this approach, dot address underscore prefixes. See, and this is the list. So this is how we can use the Terraform console. We can interact with the Terraform configuration code. We can perform different configuration. We can perform different tasks using the function or something like that, whatever you want to do. So I can do with the Terraform console, and if I get the desired output, then only I make the changes into the actual code. So Terraform console is helping you to like do the troubleshooting of your code if you are facing any issue. If you want some specific value, like how or what would be the reference of that value, like I wanted to see how can I call the backend subnet address prefix. So I can use the Terraform console. This is what I'm using in a real-time environment as well. If I wanted to see like how I'm going to refer that particular value or get that particular value with what reference, so I can perform different references and see here like how can I call this value, like address prefix. So to call the address prefix of the backend, this is what I'm going to use, or this is what I can use. Or if you want to perform some task, like you wanted to do some upper and then the name of the resource group you want as an output, so you wanted to see like what would be the impact of that upper function or something like that, that is also you can do. So like I'll do module dot subnets dot maybe subnet and then p and then the name. So let's see if it works. Yeah, it worked. So the subnet name is in the upper way or upper format. So all this task we can perform with the Terraform console command. It's basically a command line tool for the Terraform, and you can perform all this kind of a task for the troubleshooting, to get the information, to get the specific information without going to the state file or somewhere else. You can always use the Terraform console to get all these values. So that is the purpose of the Terraform console. It is actually a useful command. You may have to use it somewhere in your real-time environment. So hope you understand it. And if you have any questions, just put it into the comment. And I hope you enjoyed this session, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Okay, let's talk about the Terraform graph command now. This is the last command we are going to discuss in the Terraform advanced command section. And with the help of the Terraform graph command, you can basically generate the graphical view of your Terraform code. So if you wanted to see in a graphical way how your resources are related to each other, what relationship they do have. So I have a resource group and I have a network security group. My network security group is inside the resource group. So there is a dependency in between them. There is a relationship in between them. I wanted to generate a graphical format or graphical flow in between of these resources. So I can do with the help of the Terraform graph command. Terraform graph command is basically generating a dot language output. And with this dot language output, you can use any dot visualizer to see the visualized way of your Terraform code. So let's have a look how we do that. So I'll take the same reference of the code. We do have test resource group. We do have the test backend NSG, then prod resource group, prod backend NSG. What I'll have to do is first I can either apply it and then run the Terraform graph command, or if I just wanted to do the Terraform graph with the plan itself, then that is also can be done. But this code is already been applied, so I can just use the Terraform graph command and it will give me the output of the dot language graph, and then I can use it into the visualization. But if you wanted to do before the apply, then you can also do that. But then you have to use the Terraform graph command with the type flag is equal to test. Or which is equal to plan, not test, of course. So is equal to plan. So it will show you the Terraform graph with the plan action. But in my case, I already applied the code, so I'll just run the Terraform graph command, and you can see there is an output of the dot format graph. And I can copy this digraph G whole code over here. The dot language code is basically a machine readable code. So I can use it and I can use any of the dot visualizer. So there are a lot of websites available for the dot visualizer. You can use any of them, or you can use the one which I am using. That is dreampuff.github.io or something like that. So you can use it. You can copy your digraph G section, the whole section. You can paste it over there, and you can generate the graphical view of your Terraform code. And now you can see the relationship between the resources. So there is a Azure RPM resource group dot test RG, and then inside that RG we do have this network security group. So if you have a like very complex code and you wanted to see the graphical view of those dependencies, those relationship, then you can do that with the help of the Terraform graph command. So this command is sometimes useful to generate the report, to show the visualization of your code. If you want to presenting with the someone, then you can use the Terraform graph command to do that. So that is how we can generate the Terraform graph command. And this is the last command which we are going to discuss about in the Terraform advanced command. We can have a quick look in a practical way how we generate it and how we can use it. If you're using a Linux machine, then there is a tool available for the dot. You can install that dot tool and you can generate it directly. So it will generate you and it will give you the output in a PNG format or JPG format, whatever you want. But I'll show you in with the Windows machine how we can use it. and I'll show you in the practical way how we generate the Terraform graph command with the more complex code, and then how it will look like. So let's have a look. In this section, we talked about the Terraform graph. Basically, Terraform graph is showing you a GUI way of what your resources are and how they do have the dependencies on each other. So we can have the Terraform, or we can run the Terraform graph command to generate a dot graphic, and we can use the output of that dot graphic. That is basically a language to generate a graph out of the like a command or code. So digraph G is basically using Terraform is using the digraph G to generate the Terraform graph, and we can use the output of this command. We can either take it into the file or something and just go to the Google, search for the graphic viz online, and this is the page you are going to use. You open this page, you will get something like this, and you can just simply paste your code over here, and you can see the graphical way of your Terraform resources. So we do have this Terraform resource group. Underneath of that, we do have the app service plan, we do have virtual network, we do have network security group. So in the graphical way, you can see how these resources are dependent to each other. So our service plan is dependent on the resource group, and services are dependent on service plan. This is what we do have, right? And then we do have the virtual network, and on virtual network we do have the sub dependency of the subnets, and we also have the network security group, which is not dependent on the virtual network but on resource group, because we are creating the network security group in the resource group. So we do have the dependency here. Then we do have the association, which is depend on the subnet and the NSG. So if you have a more big environment and you wanted to generate like a graphical view for the reporting purpose to showcase like how the dependency module is, then you can use the Terraform graph command. And the Terraform graph command is basically generating a code for the digraph G, and then you can use this digraph to generate the image of your code, and you can showcase in a GUI way, in a graphical way, how your resources are dependent to each other. So that is the only purpose we do have for the Terraform graph command. Maybe you use it or you might not use it, but good to know like what is the Terraform graph command is doing. Now that's all about this session, and that is the last one which we have to discuss. And with this topic, we have completed all the topics which we had to discuss in like throughout the course. And yeah, thanks for watching my course.